What's going on, everybody? And Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. I hope you are having a beautiful holiday season, beautiful Christmas day. If you're listening to this after Christmas, I hope you're not suffering from too much post holiday depression. But I appreciate you guys for joining me on another special edition of the Baumbastic Podcast, presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. And so today's episode is a little bit of a special edition. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this or not, or if this is even a good idea, but I decided to keep it a little bit simple and we can talk. We're going to continue to talk about the 2025 roster, how we feel about every position. I really am looking forward to this Arkansas team and getting back on campus to see some of these guys in action, break down some spring practice leading up to the season. And we'll be bringing you guys all of the scoops, all of the important updates, and look forward to arguing with all of you about who's going to go where, who's going to be on first, who's going to do this. And that's all great, and that's going to be all fun. It's going to be a great 2025 season. I really do mean that. But today is going to be a little bit of a walk down memory lane, a little bit of a reminiscing session. I've decided to just kind of talk about my 5 favorite games from the Dave Van Horn era of Arkansas baseball, which dates back to 2003. There's a lot of College World Series runs in there. There's a lot of fun games in there. I basically, as I do with everything, I just can only view it through my lens. So I'm sure some of you guys have a different list. Maybe there's some different games that stick out. And I want to hear from you, as I always do. I always say that on this show, and I don't mean it, or I don't not mean it. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you have to say. What were some of your favorite moments? Maybe you agree with my list. Maybe you have some of your own. I just honestly, like, these are the games that kind of, I guess, shaped my fandom, shaped the way that I view the program, and kind of made me fall in love with it, I guess, especially the number one game, which I'm sure is going to be the number one game for a lot of you, or at least the number one moment. But of course, I love hearing, any of you guys, anybody. I feel like that's what makes fandom fun. That's what makes following a team and covering a program so fun, is being able to remember those moments so vividly, remember where you were when you experienced them. And that's really what it's all about. And I feel like that's what kind of binds us all together as fans of the same thing, as people come together and enjoy and love the same thing. And we all love this Arkansas baseball program, I assume, or else you wouldn't be listening to the Baumbastic Podcast, especially not on freaking Christmas when you're supposed to be hanging out with your in-laws, hanging out with your cousins, your family, or your kids, or whoever it is. And once again, I really do appreciate you guys for kicking it with me and continuing to support and love this podcast. I really do appreciate it. It is not lost on me how cool that is. And if you are not subscribed to our Inside Arkansas YouTube channel, today's Christmas, so might be a little bit of a more slow day, although I know Curtis is always continuing to put out that crazy Pot at the Palace content. But we got a lot going on over there, covering the transfer portal, covering this basketball team mid-basketball season. Nobody does it better than us in that regard, and I say us, really Curtis, in that regard. We've also got baseball season around the corner, so you will not want to miss out on everything we've got going on with Inside Arkansas. Make sure you're also subscribed to the Baumbastic Podcast. It has its own separate podcast feed, as well as our Inside Arkansas live show that's live every day, Monday through Friday at noon. Pot at the Palace, Pot of that nature. All those things are heating up. We've got a lot of fun stuff going on, man. It's a great time to be, well, I don't want to say a great time to be a Razorback fan, but there's a lot going on. And so it's a great time to follow these programs. And again, we have you covered with it all. But like I said, we're just going to kind of take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. I wish I had more like clips and things to show, but I really don't want to get demonetized, really don't want to get copyrighted here. So I am going to play a video for the number one game, the number one moment of the DVH era. And again, this is a very subjective list. This is just kind of my own personal 5 favorite games, or favorite games of the DVH era, I guess, moments, if you want to call them that as well. But I want to start in 2019, my number 5 game. This is one that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough, considering how chaotic it is, and considering just how much went on. I mean, it's a 15-inning game. Arkansas is at Auburn. This is 2019. I believe it was in the month of April, middle of SEC play. And for those that remember, if you don't, I'll provide you with this nice little trip down memory lane again. Arkansas played a doubleheader at Auburn in this game. They lose the first game of the day, and then they come back and play game 2. And Arkansas ends up winning this game 9-6 in 15 innings. And then they end up winning 8-0 the next day. Would it have changed anything if Arkansas had lost? Maybe not, but it was just one of those games where as soon as Arkansas won game 2, you kind of knew they were going to win that next day, and they end up winning. I believe it was 8-0, blew them out. So for those that don't remember, Connor Noland, freshman Connor Noland, if you can remember that, this is back when he was still on the football team. This is back when Chad Morris was still the head coach. He started this game on the mound, goes 4 2/3, gives up 3, Cole Ramage, who I know some of you may remember. I remember Cole Ramage fondly. I know some of you may not. He goes 4 2/3 in relief in this game, worked out of a ton of jams. Again, this is a game that went 15 innings. There was a lot going on. Matt Cronin pitched in this game as well. Arkansas went to their closer, and then like 6 more innings of baseball happened. That's just how chaotic this whole thing was. And the winning pitcher for Arkansas in this game was Kevin Kopps. And if you hear that name, you say, "Oh yeah, of course Kevin Kopps was the guy that Arkansas turned to in the 15th inning." This was pre-Kevin. This was before Kevin Kopps became Kevin Kopps. So this was like, I guess it was his redshirt junior year after coming off of surgery the year before, and he was a big part of Arkansas's bullpen, but was not the Kevin Kopps that we know and love. That was just mowing dudes down and going 4 or 5 innings, and really was the Golden Spikes winner, the GOAT. Some would argue the best pitcher in program history. You can make all those cases, but again, this is before that. And not only was he not that guy, Kevin Kopps was the losing pitcher earlier that day in game 1 of the doubleheader. You don't really, if you've seen that at any level of baseball, a guy be the losing pitcher in game 1 of a doubleheader and then the winning pitcher in game 2. I can't think of any other time. I mean, high school, junior high, MLB, like I just have never seen that before. So that's unique. Again, this is a 9-6 game. So a lot of high scoring, a lot of cool action. There was actually a moment in the 9th inning where it looked like Auburn walked off Arkansas. They had a base hit through the left side against Cole Ramage. Guy slides in at the plate. Umpire calls him safe. Auburn even dogpiled at home plate. And this is not, dogpiling is obviously what you do when you go to Omaha. This wasn't like a full-on, like, crazy throwing Gatorade celebrate, but like Auburn thought they walked off the game and they had just beat what was a top 10 Arkansas team in a series, and we're going to go for the sweep tomorrow. They go to review. Turned out Casey Opitz got the tag on. It was Christian Franklin, by the way, who was the left fielder who had the outfield assist there on that play. So massive play in that game. You also had a Trevor Ezell 3-run home run that tied it up there in extra innings as well. You had Dominic Fletcher had 4 hits in this game. Matt Goodhart had 3 hits, including a few huge RBI, a couple in the final inning there. And in the 15th inning, Heston Kjerstad, another name you guys may remember, he was 0 for 7 in this game because, again, goes 15 innings. Heston Kjerstad hits a solo home run in the top of the 15th that put Arkansas up 7-6, and they end up tacking on 2 more on a Matt Goodhart double. Just a really awesome game, and I feel like that 2019 team, which ended up going to the College World Series, goes 0-2 in that series, but that was one of their, I felt like, defining moments. And that was a team that we knew was going to be really good. There weren't a ton of question marks about the team, but I feel like there's that situation a lot of times with these teams where you see it on paper and you see how good they should be or how good they could be. But sometimes you need to go through that adversity. You have to go through the battles before you really fall in love with the team, especially now in this transfer portal era when the rosters are all new and everything. Like Trevor Ezell had that huge 3-run home run. I feel like that was a massive moment where we kind of knew, hey, this Trevor Ezell guy, this is a guy we can count on. I mentioned Matt Goodhart, who had 3 hits. He was another guy that was awesome in SEC play for Arkansas. That was a moment where we were like, hey, we can count on this guy. Obviously, Kevin Kopps, Cole Ramage, Matt Cronin. I mean, the list goes on. Guys that had to step up for Arkansas in this game. I mean, the list goes on. And another game that kind of fits this criteria, another one on the road against what at the time was a divisional rival. My number 4 game featured a lot of the same characters from this game. The 2021 Ole Miss game. I'm sure a lot of you remember where you were watching this game. So this is another one where, series comes down to the final game. This was game 3 of the series. Arkansas and Ole Miss had played a doubleheader the day before on Saturday, split it. Arkansas won game 1. Ole Miss wins game 2. I mentioned Kevin Kopps and how he pitched in both halves of the doubleheader against Auburn. He had pitched and gotten the save for Arkansas in game 1 the day before. He ends up pitching in this game 3 again. In this game, the final score was 18-14. Just an absolutely chaotic game. Arkansas led 11-0 after 3 innings of this game. 11-0. Ole Miss tied the game at 14 in the 7th inning, which, right there, then and there, that's kind of all you need to know about this game of how chaotic it was. Everyone in the lineup except Robert Moore got a hit for Arkansas, and Robert Moore got walked 4 times. 7 different Razorbacks had 2+ RBI. Caden Wallace hit a home run. Cullen Smith hit a home run. Braden Webb hit a home run. If I remember correctly, Lyle Lockhart started the game and went about 2 2/3. I remember in the moment, I kid you not, I remember being like, I feel like they're yanking him too early. And I've been saying this for a while now that I felt like DVH never really trusted Lyle Lockhart. And it kind of became a common theme of the season, him having a little bit of a quick hook on Lyle Lockhart. I honestly feel like of all the things we talk about in the 2021 season that ended up costing Arkansas, I feel like that kind of cost them because he ended up going to Ryan Koshu in game 2 of that super regional series against NC State. Koshu ends up giving up a home run, and the rest was kind of history from there. But anyways, Arkansas, this is a Sunday game, one that ended 18-14. Arkansas used 5 different pitchers in this game. Jackson Wiggins came in and got roughed up in that game. So Arkansas ends up having to go to Kevin Kopps again, which again, if you remember that 2021 season was a very familiar, very consistent feeling. This game was so chaotic. You want to know how chaotic it was? Kevin Kopps gave up a run. That's how chaotic it was. He gave up that 14th Ole Miss run before Arkansas added on 3 runs the next inning to, put it up ahead. I believe Brady Slavens had a huge 2-run double that really set the tone there. Another thing that I liked about this game is I mentioned Kevin Kopps going in, Arkansas's closer, obviously. Ole Miss went to their closer, Taylor Broadway, who had closed out the game that they won the night before. They go back to him again in that Sunday game, and Arkansas gets him for 2 runs, and they end up having to go to someone else. They put on 2 more runs on that guy. And so it was just kind of one of those games where you could just see the separation. And I feel like the right team won, obviously. The right team won game 3, the rubber match. And it's just one of those, we both have our guy on the mound. We're both tired. We've both gone through a bunch of arms. It's been a chaotic game. Arkansas found a way to win. And I feel like that's what that 2021 team, obviously we all remember the disappointing finish. But when I think about that 2021 team, I think about how they found a way to win every single weekend. And when I say every single weekend, they literally did not lose an SEC series, which honestly, like, you can make an argument is even harder than winning the national championship. Not a more prestigious honor, obviously. But again, just one of those moments where, like, I'm never going to forget some of those weekends watching that team and just how fun their run was. But moving on a little bit, we go to my number 3 game of the DVH era. This is 2018. And honestly, I could make an argument for this being like my favorite personal moment. Like I just remember vividly where I was at. I was actually, believe it or not, I was interning at Pig Trail Nation. And I didn't get to go on this trip to the College World Series. But I remember like just working for them that summer. And that was kind of the summer that I really decided this is what I wanted to do. And I knew obviously Arkansas went to the College World Series. So I got to cover some of those super regional games, those regional games, and kind of be a part of the run for the first time in my life. And I'm a boy from Louisiana. I was going to school. I was in college in Louisiana. And I always knew that I wanted to be up in Fayetteville and covering the Arkansas Razorbacks. But you don't really, I knew I loved the Arkansas Razorbacks, but it's like I never lived in Fayetteville. I'd never even lived in the state of Arkansas. So going up there that summer of 2018 was kind of a defining moment where I was like, okay, this really is the direction I'm headed in life. And obviously here we are rolling up on 2025 and I'm still doing this, which, kind of makes me happy to look back on. But anyways, this is the 2018 season, which obviously I've always said is the Arkansas team that I feel like is the standard, like what we should compare every Arkansas team to in terms of just top to bottom roster, the way that team played, some of the pieces. I mean, the MLB talent that was on that team, they obviously finished as far as any other Razorback team. They were one out short of winning the national championship. So when I think of anytime, like literally, you're going to hear me say that during the 2025 season, I'm going to be comparing them to 2018 because that was kind of, arguably the best team in program history. But when I just think of a great Arkansas baseball team, I think of 2018. And I mean, that whole season, honestly, was pretty magical. We kind of knew it was going to be a special year in the preseason, but there was a lot of moments that kind of led up to Arkansas making the College World Series final and ultimately to the sad ending to it. But this is the semifinal when they beat Florida. The final score in this game was 5-2. And this is, again, like of my lifetime in that moment. I know Arkansas had made some College World Series finals back in the day with Norm DeBryan. I was not alive for those. I was not tapped in with those. So for me, like this was like the moment. This was the first night that I remember being like, dude, Arkansas is going to win the national championship in baseball. Obviously, they didn't. But that's what you want as a sports fan, to feel like your team is going to win the ultimate prize. And this was like really a night where I was like, holy cow, Arkansas is going to do it. I had buddies texting me and they were like, dude, y'all are the team, man. It's going to be awesome. And obviously it didn't work out that way, the end result. But on this particular night, it was special. So let's start at the beginning. Isaiah Campbell, who, again, we all remember Isaiah Campbell for the 2019 season when he was 12-1, was Arkansas's ace, was just a consistent workhorse stud every week. You knew you could count on him. We knew he was a second-round pick. He's in the MLB now. He's going to have a long career. This was not that guy. This was the year before when he was a little bit up and down, and you never really knew what you were going to get out of him. Matter of fact, against this exact Florida team earlier in the season when they played in Gainesville, I don't even think Isaiah Campbell got out of the second inning. He got really roughed up, and he had a lot of games like that throughout SEC play. Even in this very postseason, I mentioned that regional that I got to cover. When he pitched in the regional final, I believe it was against Dallas Baptist, he didn't even record an out. And I remember people booing Isaiah Campbell at Baum-Walker Stadium, again, literal weeks before this moment. And so then he gets the ball in a semifinal matchup against the Florida team that was ranked number 1 in the country. They were the number 1 overall seed, and they had been the number 1 overall team pretty much the entire year. Arkansas had lost a series to them in Gainesville earlier. They beat them in Hoover. That was the game that Hunter Wilson hit that grand slam, which was really awesome. And honestly, again, I talk about, this 2018 Arkansas team being kind of the standard. Florida that year had Jonathan India, the SEC Player of the Year. They had Brady Singer, who's still pitching both those guys are now Royals, by the way. Brady Singer's pitching in the big leagues. Like, they had this whole Jackson Coar as well. They had a loaded roster. They were kind of the team that, they were the standard. They were the team that everyone had circled, that everyone knew they were going to have to get through if they wanted to win a national title. So that's why this game really had so much significance in the moment. And again, Isaiah Campbell had struggled against them. So for him to show up 5 1/3, he gives up 2 runs on 2 hits, both of which I believe happened in his final inning. He had a no-hitter going through like 3 or 4 innings in this game, ends up striking out 8, which at the time I believe was Arkansas's program record for strikeouts in the College World Series. I think he broke that record the following year. And I think Will McIntyre also maybe, I don't know if he broke the record, but he was around there, that same record as well for 8 strikeouts. Hagen Smith also tied that record as well, which I believe I'm going to reference in about 2 minutes here. Matt Cronin got the save with 2 scoreless innings pitched in this game. Casey Martin had 4 hits, scored 3 runs, which, by the way, 5-2 game. Not super high scoring. There wasn't a ton of back and forth action. So for Casey Martin to have 4 hits and score 3 runs, like, it's pretty massive. Casey Martin's career didn't really didn't finish the way that it probably should have, and the way that I guess a lot of us envisioned, especially during this 2018 season when he was a freshman and he was being billed as like a potential number 1 overall pick. And so I think there's a lot of Hog fans who probably don't view Casey Martin in the most positive light necessarily. I know he struck out a ton. I know he was a little bit infuriating to watch sometimes in the field, and the inconsistency at the plate and all that. But I just want to say, anytime you're going to talk about Casey Martin as an Arkansas Razorback, it has to start with, I know he had all these awesome moments, and I know he was this awesome postseason performer who always showed up for the Arkansas Razorbacks and was a legend in Omaha. But, if you're going to knock him, you have to say, I know he did all these awesome things. I know he had all these awesome moments in Omaha, but, look, after that but, you could say whatever you want. But Casey Martin, in my eyes, like from Lone Oak, Arkansas, Jackrabbit, he's an Arkansas legend, in my opinion. I feel like he was kind of like a representative of kind of the shift, because like obviously the state of Arkansas at this point in the world we live in today produces a ton of in-state talent. I mean, you can just take the top 10 players in the state of Arkansas, and like that's a pretty good start to your recruiting class every year. That wasn't always the case. And I feel like Casey Martin and Heston Kurtz, that wasn't from Arkansas, but like that recruiting class was one of the best Arkansas's ever had. But I feel like Casey Martin was kind of representative of this like new era of talent that is coming through the state of Arkansas in baseball. I mentioned Dominic Fletcher earlier. Dominic Fletcher had an absolute mammoth home run off of Brady Singer, who, by the way, Brady Singer, as we all know, or maybe you don't, Arkansas absolutely owned Brady Singer. I don't know if they were just sign stealing. I don't know if they just had his number or what. But in 2017, when he was a sophomore, Arkansas absolutely lit him up. I think they scored like 10 runs on him in 2 innings in Hoover, blew him up in that game. They beat him in Gainesville earlier in this 2018 season. And by the way, Brady Singer was like 12-2 with like a 2.4 ERA. Like, he was arguably the best pitcher in the country against everybody not named the Arkansas Razorbacks. He allowed 4 runs in 5 innings in this particular game, which that was like the best career outing he ever had against Arkansas. And again, it was a 5-2 game. So like that was pretty much it. But Dominic Fletcher hit like a 450-foot home run off of him. And I remember that also kind of being the moment where I was like, holy cow, this team's really going to do it. Just a lot of fun moments in this game. And one that, like, again, it just made me really proud to be a Razorback. Like, I just remember having a deep sense of pride watching that game. They released like a little video after the game, kind of like the highlights, but they showed clips from DVH talking to the team, and I'll never forget. This moment lives in my head forever. He says, "I don't care if they have the best player in the SEC. I don't care if they have the best pitcher in the SEC. We got a really good team, and we're going to take it to them." And like, anytime Arkansas is facing a really like high level team, high level opponent, I just kind of think about that. And one of my favorite moments of Arkansas really rising to the occasion in the postseason, which, everyone always kind of claims like, oh, so and so chokes in the postseason, and Arkansas's had their fair share of chokes in the postseason. Let's just be honest. But every team kind of has, and so this is kind of one of those moments where like I kind of think of when people say stuff like that, where I'm like, do they really, do they really choke in the postseason? Not every time. So it's good to see them kind of rise to the occasion again against what we thought at the time was the best team in the country, even though Oregon State turned out to be that. Moving on to number 2, I've got another Omaha game here. And by the way, I understand there's going to be some people's list that are going to be like all postseason games, and I get that. Obviously, the postseason is what we all remember. That's kind of where your season's decided. And so realistically, this could have been just 5 postseason wins for the Arkansas Razorbacks, and it'd be hard to argue with that list. But I tried to mix in a couple regular season games outside of that as well. But this is another postseason game, and this is one that I'm kind of partial to because I was there in Omaha my first time covering an Arkansas game in Omaha, being in TD Ameritrade Park, and just being there for that whole atmosphere. And so this is one that I personally will never forget. And Arkansas wins this game 3-2 against the Ole Miss Rebels. They staved off elimination. Now the following day, Arkansas season ended. They get beat 2-0. Disappointing end once again. But again, Arkansas finishes in the semifinal in the College World Series. This is a game that I think a lot of people remember the final inning. But in this game, Hagen Smith goes 5 innings, allows 1 run. And Hagen Smith, by the way, this is a freshman Hagen Smith. Again, kind of weirdly, I don't know if I didn't mean for this to be the case, but it's kind of the theme of this podcast of like guys doing stuff before they became household names. This is Hagen Smith, a freshman who a couple of weeks ago had struck out Rock Reggio and had a huge moment against Oklahoma State. And had been kind of converted to a closing role for Arkansas, but times get tough. You just have to give the ball to whoever. It's an elimination game. Arkansas gives him a start as a true freshman in an elimination game. He goes 5 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. Evan Taylor, which is a name that if you're a deep cut fan, of course you know his name. Might not be one that's like on everyone's list of like favorite Razorbacks ever, but Evan Taylor was a guy who had a really awesome 2022 season for Arkansas as a senior. And he's a guy that I'll always remember and respect, one, just because like I know him and know his family and they're good people, but just because I remember his whole journey. I mean, he's a true freshman in 2019. I remember him having some moments and it was like, holy cow, this left-handed pitcher Arkansas got from Alabama, he's just going to be a stud. Never really put it together as a freshman. COVID happens in 2020. In 2021, again, kind of had some moments, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a key left-handed weapon for Arkansas out of the bullpen, and then they just kind of stopped using him. It just never really materialized. So to see him continue to push through, stay at Arkansas when I'm sure he thought about going elsewhere. I'm sure, in fact, I know he had people in his life that were kind of like, hey, maybe you need to go elsewhere. He stays in Fayetteville. He found a way to make it happen. He was a huge piece for Arkansas in this season, was like their top left-handed arm out of the bullpen. He had also had a rough postseason in 2022, had really gotten roughed up in the regional to the point where I was like, holy cow, like, can we really trust this guy? Like, what's going on here? So again, that perseverance I think of in his entire career. And I think of in this season, he comes through in this particular game, elimination, got to have it, nuts on the table, goes 3 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. I mentioned the 1 run. It came in the 9th inning because Arkansas tried to bring him back. He pitches the 6th, 7th, and 8th. They were going to try and squeeze that 4th inning out of him because, again, you're in an elimination game and you had to win 2. You had to beat this team twice. So you're trying not to use a ton of arms. He ends up giving up a leadoff single. So they go to the bullpen. They go to Brady Tigert, a true freshman who, again, had been Arkansas's closer. And again, I could also kind of say this for Tigert a little bit before he became a household name, but he was a freshman, a known commodity at this point. But if you remember, he had kind of really struggled down the stretch of his freshman year to the point where he had kind of lost his closing gig. And so Arkansas was going to him in this spot. Again, it's 3-1 at this point. Evan Taylor just gave up a leadoff single. There's 0 outs. And Arkansas' season's on the line. They go to Brady Tigert. He hits the first 2 batters he faces. So they go quick hook. They turn it over to Zach Morris, left-handed junior at the time. from the state of Arkansas, from Cabot. And again, Zach Morris, who had a really good year for Arkansas in 2022, but like I wouldn't say he was like Arkansas's closer or like necessarily the guy that they wanted in this particular situation. I don't know if there's anybody you really want in this situation. Bases loaded, 1 out, season on the line. But Zach Morris comes in, strikes out the first hitter he faces. I believe it was on 3 pitches. Huge, huge, huge stuff. He gets a fly ball out to Jace Borfin, who, by the way, had come in as a defensive replacement for Zach Gregory. And if for those that don't remember this game, you may remember Jalen Battles. I don't know if there was like a miscommunication, but he was playing shortstop. He runs out, and I'm not even kidding. He looked like a safety, like Ed Reed hitting a receiver over the middle, runs into Jace Borfin as he's catching it. And again, bases are loaded, 1 out, season's on the line, but Jace holds on to it. And I always think about that because I'm like, if that's Zach Gregory, who loves Zach Gregory, 5'9", about 180, I don't know if he necessarily is going to hold on to that ball when Jalen Battles, 6'2", 215, runs into him. But Jace Borfin does that, holds on for that second out. And thank God he did, because Zach Morris gives up a base hit through the left side after that. Only 1 run scored there. And then so it's, bases loaded, tying run at third, game-winning run at second, and he gets another fly ball out. Arkansas escapes. Really just an electric game. It was a night game, too. It was just a fun atmosphere because both fan bases really showed up. Arkansas gets the win 3-2, saves their season for, I guess it was like 12 more hours. I remember being there that weekend, and I stayed in a hotel with Andrew Hutchinson, Mason Choate, Robert Stewart, who no longer covers the team, but is one of my good buddies, and Christian Cheatham, who still works around in Fayetteville, in that area. That's 5 dudes all staying in like whatever hotel you can stay in. If anyone's been to Omaha, it's kind of hectic. It's really hard to book hotels, and especially because you don't know how long Arkansas is going to be there. So we're trying to make it work. We're staying in the Days Inn, then we're moving over to the Quality Inn, then we're moving over to the Comfort Inn and Suites, and we're just doing whatever we can. So it was like a long, grueling trip. But I remember walking out, and Andrew Hutchinson, who, by the way, like does just a phenomenal job covering the Razorbacks, in baseball in particular. He's really good. And he was walking out, and we were just talking, and he was like, man, I was so nervous during the 9th inning, and just was kind of shaking. It's just one of those moments where, like, it's not even, look, we're not even, he went to the University of Arkansas. I consider myself an Arkansas fan. It's not even like you're nervous about, like, what if Arkansas loses? It's just like when a big moment happens, you're kind of shaking a little bit. It's just nerve-wracking. Even if you don't have a rooting interest, it's just one of those moments. It's a game that was so good and so tense that, like, you just kind of feel that nervous energy, and probably everyone in the ballpark felt it. Even fans that weren't there for either team were just kind of there to enjoy the action. And he was like, "Man, if I get to a point in life," he said this, he was like, "If I ever get to a point in life where I don't feel that, I don't want to do this anymore." And I think about that a lot, especially when I'm covering big games, big moments, and getting to the 9th inning, it's getting to the 4th quarter or whatever it is, and you kind of feel that nervous energy come over you. And so it was just cool, and especially for me in that moment. I was still kind of cutting my teeth. That was my first couple years working for Trey Biddy at Hog Sports. And so to hear someone who I really look up to in Andrew Hutchinson to kind of say that to me, it really just made me feel validated, where I was like, okay, like it's normal to feel how we feel. And it's just one of those moments that, like, we'll always remember. And that was a special time. Another few other notes from this game, by the way. Brady Slavens hit a 436-foot home run to dead center, which I believe at the moment, I don't know if this record still stands, but in the moment, it was the longest home run hit at TD Ameritrade Park, which, again, has not always been the home of the College World Series, but it had been the home for at least a decade at that point. And so it's pretty cool for Brady Slavens, who, kind of like Casey Martin, maybe the end of his career didn't finish the way that a lot of fans wanted it to. But for my money, I'm always going to remember Brady Slavens fondly. Really loved watching him play baseball. Chris Lanzilli also had a home run. He was a guy who had a really fun season transferring from Wake Forest, had a really fun graduate season for Arkansas. And the go-ahead, which turned into the game-winning run, came in the 8th inning. Caden Wallace hit a leadoff double. Michael Turner drove him in with an RBI single. So those are kind of some of the characters that stepped up for Arkansas in that game. And just, that's really what makes some of these games fun and like these seasons fun to look back on, is you just think about all the different names, all the different characters who have to step up and have to do their part for you to remember all these moments, for there to be these awesome wins for us to remember. It's kind of what makes it special. And now here we are to the number 1 game, which, again, I'm being honest with you, I don't remember a ton from this game because I guess I was 6 years old. It's 2004, Arkansas versus Wichita State. Arkansas ends up winning this game 11-9. If you're an Arkansas baseball fan or even any knowledge of the program, you probably know where I'm going with this. This is the Brady Toops Grand Slam, which, by the way, this was not the regional final. I was doing some research before I did this pod, and I kind of my memory had like gone a little fuzzy there. Again, I was literally 6 years old. I did not watch this game on TV because this is back in the day where it was really hard to watch college baseball on TV. But I remember listening to Chuck Barrett on the radio and kind of had the play-by-play, the stat broadcast pulled up. And I remember my dad being in the living room, and I was just like giving him updates. My dad gets still to this day, gets so nervous sometimes in these big games, kind of like the feeling, the moment I was describing earlier. He like can't even watch, can't even listen. He just kind of has to like remove himself. So there's like tons of like awesome Razorback moments over the last 20 years that my dad has just not experienced because he just like has to check out. He's got high blood pressure. He didn't want to have a heart attack, so he just checks out. My aunt does the same thing. They just like can't take the pain. They can't take the anxiety, so they just check out. And so I remember as a 6-year-old, and again, this is kind of like my formative years of really starting to fall in love with the program and stuff. And so I'm like listening on the radio, checking the stat broadcast, running back and forth, telling my dad, "Oh, we got runner on second, 2 outs," like just giving him the updates, running back and forth. Like it was just one of those moments that I remember very vividly. And I remember very vividly listening to the Brady Toops home run, the grand slam, Arkansas's catcher. This is a left-handed catcher who hit an opposite field home run. This is back in the day when they had those bats where the ball just really flew off of it. This is the BB core, the non-BB core era, where the ball is just absolutely carried. Nowadays, this would probably be like a shallow fly ball to left center field, but it snuck out, and the crowd went nuts. Arkansas scored 5 runs in the top of the 9th inning. They were the away team in this game because they needed to beat Wichita State twice in this home regional, by the way. This is also DVH's second year at Arkansas. So this is like early days. Arkansas, the program was in a very, not like it wasn't like in a bad spot. It wasn't like they were a nothing program, but this is really like the first year that Arkansas was a contender under Dave Van Horn. They won the SEC that year, and they kind of came out of nowhere. Like nobody expected Arkansas to be good that year, and I guess that's what made that whole season so fun. They ended up going to the College World Series in Omaha, going 0-2 in that. But I remember as a kid being so excited that Arkansas went to the College World Series because of my lifetime, that was their first time, and I was just like so excited. And we got to watch the games on TV when they lost. I didn't even care. That was like the ultimate, like just happy to be there year. I was just so happy that Arkansas made it to the College World Series. And again, I feel like this was it was the beginning of the DVH era, kind of where everything became cool, but it was really a moment where I fell in love with Arkansas Razorback baseball. I doubt that I would be here, like doing what I'm doing. Definitely not like as into baseball as I am without this moment. It was just, when you're watching a game with a kid, which I have nephews, I have nieces. Like I watch sporting events with kids a lot. But if anyone who has kids knows what I'm talking about. If you're watching the game with like an 8-year-old, they'll always be saying something like, "What if they just scored a touchdown right here?" Or like, "You're at the 1-yard line. What if the running back just ripped off a 99-yard run? Oh, what if you're down 30-0? What if we just scored 5 straight touchdowns and came back and won?" Like they're always envisioning kind of the most chaotic, like the coolest possible thing in their head. And they're like, "What if this happened?" And this game was kind of that, where I'm a 6-year-old sitting there listening to the game, and I'm like, dude, what if Arkansas scored 5 runs in the 9th? What if our catcher just hits a grand slam right now? And he did it, and it was awesome. It was a special moment, and a moment, by the way, that I'm going to play for you guys right now.
Brady stands in from the left side. Bannock's going to work from the stretch with the bases loaded. The pitch is coming, swinging a fly ball to left field, hit pretty well. Going back is Napolitan, that ball's gone! That's a grand slam home run! Brady Toops just hit a grand slam home run! And the Razorbacks have taken the lead! Oh my goodness! Brady Toops just hit a grand slam home run! Arkansas has taken the lead 11-9! That ball just kept carrying and got out of the ballpark. Oh my goodness. Brady Toops with the biggest hit of his Razorback career. A grand slam home run. And Arkansas leads at 11-9.
Shout out to Chuck Barrett, by the way, guys, who obviously now still does radio for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He does for football and basketball, I should say. Phil Elson, by the way, who's now the baseball guy, a friend of mine. Arkansas's had a really good run with radio guys. The play-by-play guys have been awesome. Phil is unreal. It's crazy that Chuck, who is such a legend and such like an icon, he was a huge part of my childhood growing up listening to him. That Arkansas was able to move him off of baseball games and then replace him with someone just as good in Phil Elson. Like if Phil Elson were anything other than like the man at his job, Arkansas fans probably would have hated him. But he's so good that we all just were like, you know what? This guy's awesome. Keep him here. It's all good. And so yeah, these moments, like when I just look back and listen to that and watch that, it just really tugs at the heartstrings, man. It really does. I'm going to read a few more notes before this on this game before I get out of here. So Brady Toops obviously had the walk-off grand slam. He also had 3 hits in this game as well. Haas Pratt also homered and had 4 RBI for the Hogs. Clay Goodwin had 2 hits in this game. Clay Goodwin, who was the starting third baseman back in 2004, he is now the president of baseball, or like the runner of, I don't know what his exact title is, like president of baseball operations, CEO, I don't know, but he's basically like the GM of Arkansas baseball. So it's kind of cool to see his name. He also coached the Arkansas baseball camp that I attended in 2009. So shout out to Clay Goodwin. But yeah, I feel like this game is a good, like formative, if it's a formative, like core memory for me, but I also feel like it's kind of like the entire Arkansas baseball era that we've experienced these last 20 years. It kind of all started here, obviously. And I mean, just to see the president of baseball operations playing third base in this game, Brady Toops, who I believe makes music now. I still see him, cheering on the Hogs, tweeting about the Hogs, posting on Instagram or whatever it is. And, it's just really cool. It's just one of those moments that I feel like anyone who was there is never going to forget it. Anybody who was watching, listening to the game, they'll never forget it. And it's just kind of, it's why we do this, man. It's why we, invest so heavily into this team and this program and just these moments. And hopefully we'll get to experience a few more of these awesome, cool moments that we'll never forget this upcoming 2025 season. And we will be here every step of the way on the Baumbastic Podcast to live through it with you, to experience it, to make sense of it, to hash it out, to rant about it, whatever the case may be. And man, I cannot wait for the season to get going. I don't know the exact countdown. I've lost track of the days, but I guess we're in the 50s, like early 50s. We're not too far away, man. It'll be here before we know it. And I can't wait. But I'm going to get out of here. You guys get back to your Christmas festivities, whatever it is you got going on. Again, I appreciate you guys for tapping in with me. I did not expect this episode to go this long, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me. And we will be back soon on a much more regular and consistent schedule as we ramp up towards baseball season. And again, I cannot wait. Appreciate you guys for tapping in. This has been another fun edition of the Baumbastic Podcast. Enjoy it and Merry Christmas.